Joel Osteen has smiled through every storm for 25 years. Hurricane Harvey couldn't break it. Media attacks couldn't crack it. Criticism from theologians, accusations from skeptics, even protests outside his church. None of it ever touched that famous, unwavering smile. But on the night of March 14th, 2024, something happened inside Lakewood Church that erased it completely. And the person responsible wasn't a journalist, wasn't a rival pastor, wasn't even a critic. It was a United States Congresswoman named Jasmine Crockett, and she only asked one question. 45,000 people were in that arena. Millions more watched from home. They came expecting another night of worship, another sermon about blessings and breakthroughs, and the good life God supposedly promises to those who believe hard enough. What they witnessed instead would become the most replayed moment in modern church history. Here's what makes this story so explosive. Jasmine Crockett wasn't supposed to confront anyone that night. She was invited as an honored guest to speak about faith and public service. Joel Osteen personally approved her appearance, believing her testimony would boost his image with younger audiences. He had no idea what she was carrying. No idea about the secret she'd kept buried for 15 years. No idea about a grandmother who died waiting for a miracle that never came. No idea that Jasmine had spent 2 weeks preparing for this exact moment, studying his sermons, memorizing his quotes, and rehearsing one single question designed to cut through everything he'd built. What was that question? I'll tell you. But first, you need to understand what drove Jasmine to that stage. Because this wasn't about politics. This wasn't about fame. This was about a promise made at a graveside, and a debt she intended to collect in front of the entire world. Two versions of faith were about to collide on live television. One built on prosperity. One forged in poverty. And only one would be left standing when the lights went down. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Not even Jasmine herself. To understand what happened that night, you need to know what was happening behind Joel Osteen's smile in the months leading up to it. On the surface, everything looked perfect. Lakewood Church remained the largest congregation in America. His books still sold millions. His television broadcast reached homes in over 100 countries. The empire was intact. But cracks were forming where no camera could see. Donations had dropped 19% over the past 2 years. Younger generations were abandoning prosperity theology in record numbers, calling it outdated and exploitative. Social media was flooded with testimonies from former followers who felt deceived, manipulated, and spiritually bankrupt despite years of faithful giving. And then there was the question that haunted Joel in his quietest moments. Late at night, alone in his 17,000-square-foot mansion, Joel had started doing something dangerous. He'd started reading the words of Jesus without his sermon notes, without his theological filters, without the interpretations that had built his empire. What he found terrified him. Sell everything you have and give to the poor. Blessed are those who are poor. You cannot serve both God and money. For 25 years, Joel had preached that God wanted his children wealthy. But Jesus seemed to be saying something very different. And for the first time in his ministry, Joel couldn't make the contradiction disappear. He never told anyone about these doubts. Not his wife. Not his staff. Not his congregation. The smile remained. The sermons continued. The offerings kept coming. But something inside him was beginning to break. Meanwhile, Jasmine Crockett was preparing for war. Not political war, something far more personal. 2 weeks before the Lakewood event, she'd received the invitation to speak. Her first instinct was to decline. She'd spent 15 years avoiding anything connected to prosperity preaching. But then she visited her grandmother's grave. Standing over that simple headstone, Jasmine made a decision. She would accept the invitation. She would take that stage. And she would finally ask the question that had been burning inside her since she was 14 years old. The question that killed her grandmother's faith before it killed her body. What Jasmine didn't know was that Joel Osteen was already questioning everything she planned to confront him about. Two people carrying the same doubts were about to meet on the biggest stage in American Christianity. And neither of them was ready for what would happen when their secrets collided. If you've ever questioned something you were taught to believe, stay with this story. Because what happens next will change how you see everything. The night began like every other Lakewood service. Lights, music, energy, and that signature atmosphere of celebration that Joel had perfected over decades. 45,000 seats filled. Cameras positioned throughout the arena. The worship band finishing their final song as anticipation built for the evening's special programming. Joel took the stage with his usual warmth, welcoming the anniversary crowd and thanking the faithful supporters who had made 65 years of ministry possible. Then he introduced his special guest. Tonight, we have someone truly extraordinary joining us. A woman of faith, a leader in our nation's capital, and a proud daughter of Texas. Please welcome Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. The applause was thunderous. Jasmine walked to the stage in a simple black dress, no jewelry except for a thin gold chain her grandmother had given her years ago. She smiled at the crowd, shook Joel's hand, and took her seat beside him. For the first few minutes, everything went exactly as Joel expected. Jasmine talked about growing up in Dallas, about the role faith played in her journey to Congress, about the challenges of maintaining spiritual integrity in the world of politics. The audience nodded along. Joel relaxed into his chair, his smile fully intact. Then Jasmine's tone shifted. Joel, would it be all right if I shared something personal? Something I've never talked about publicly before? Joel's smile widened. Personal testimonies were his specialty. This was exactly what he wanted, raw, emotional content that would play beautifully on the broadcast. Of course, he said. That's what tonight is all about. He had no idea what was coming. Jasmine took a breath. When she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that silenced every whisper in the arena. I want to tell you about my grandmother. Her name was Dorothy. She raised me from the time I was 6 years old. Worked 2 jobs until she was 73. Cleaned houses. Folded laundry at a commercial facility. Never complained. Never asked for anything. She paused. Except from God. She asked everything from God. Because she believed, truly believed, that if she had enough faith, if she gave enough offerings, if she spoke enough positive confessions, God would bless her the way the preachers promised. Something shifted in the arena. The energy changed. People who had been casually listening were now completely still. Joel's smile remained, but his eyes betrayed the first hint of uncertainty. He didn't know about Dorothy. He didn't know about the $3,000. He didn't know about the foreclosure notice, or the nursing home, or the grave Jasmine had visited 2 weeks ago. But he was about to find out. And when he did, that smile would finally have nowhere left to hide. Jasmine continued, her voice steady but carrying an edge that cut through the arena's polished atmosphere. When I was 14, my grandmother did something that changed our lives forever. She'd been watching a prosperity preacher on television. A man who promised that if she planted a seed offering, God was obligated to multiply it back to her. Obligated. That was the word he used. She turned to look directly at Joel. She sent $3,000. Her entire savings. Every penny she'd put away over decades of working jobs that broke her body. She sent it because she believed. Because she had faith. Because she trusted that God would keep the promise that preacher made. The arena was absolutely silent. 6 months later, she lost her house. The miracle never came. The multiplication never happened. And you know what did come? Another letter from that ministry asking for more money. More seed. More faith. Jasmine's voice cracked slightly, then steadied with visible effort. She died 3 years later in a Medicaid nursing home. The last thing she said to me was, maybe I just didn't believe hard enough. That's what prosperity theology taught my grandmother. That her poverty was her fault. That her suffering was a faith failure. That she wasn't blessed because she wasn't worthy. Joel shifted in his chair. His smile had faded into something unreadable. The cameras captured every micro-expression, broadcasting his discomfort to millions of viewers worldwide. Now, Joel, Jasmine said, her eyes meeting his with unwavering intensity. I didn't come here tonight to attack you. I know you weren't the preacher my grandmother sent that money to, but you preach the same message. You've written books telling people that God wants them wealthy. You've stood on this stage and said that seed offerings unlock supernatural blessings. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small piece of paper. On March 15, 2003, from this very stage, you said these exact words. She read slowly, deliberately. When you give generously, God is obligated to bless you generously. It's not a maybe. It's a covenant promise. Your seed offering is your ticket to supernatural increase. She folded the paper and looked back at Joel. Obligated. The same word that preacher used with my grandmother. The same promise. The same theology. Her voice dropped lower, more intense. So here's my question, Joel. Just one question. And I'm not asking for me. I'm asking for every grandmother watching right now, every single mother considering sending money she can't afford, every struggling family being told their poverty is a faith problem. The entire arena leaned forward. Did my grandmother not have enough faith? Is that why she died with nothing? Or is it possible, just possible, that this gospel of prosperity is a lie that makes preachers rich while keeping poor people poor and blaming them for it? The question hung in the air like a detonation. Joel Osteen sat frozen. In 25 years of ministry, through every controversy and criticism, no one had ever asked him this question on his own stage, in front of his own congregation, with cameras broadcasting to the world. 7 seconds passed. Then 10. Then 15. The silence became its own answer. When Joel finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know how to answer that. And in that moment, 45,000 people watched something unprecedented. Joel Osteen's smile didn't just fade. It collapsed. His eyes filled with tears, not the practiced tears of a sermon illustration, but the uncontrolled tears of a man whose foundation had just cracked beneath him. But he wasn't done. And what he said next would shock everyone more than Jasmine's question ever could. If you're still watching, don't leave now. What happens in the next few minutes changed both of their lives forever. Drop a comment if you've ever questioned what you were taught about faith and blessing. Joel Osteen stood up from his chair slowly, as if his body had suddenly aged decades in seconds. He walked to the front of the stage, away from Jasmine, away from the comfortable interview setup, and stood alone facing his congregation. 45,000 people who had built their faith on his words. When he spoke, his voice was stripped of its usual polish. I need to say something. Something I should have said a long time ago. The arena fell into a silence so deep you could hear the electrical hum of the lights above. For 25 years, I've stood on this stage and told you that God wants you blessed. That faith leads to prosperity. That if you believe hard enough, give generously enough, speak positively enough, God will reward you with abundance. He paused, his jaw tightening with emotion. But this woman just asked me a question I can't answer. She asked if her grandmother didn't have enough faith. And I realized, I've been helping people ask that same question about themselves for decades. Every time someone struggled financially, every time someone didn't get their miracle, my teaching told them it was their fault. Their faith wasn't strong enough. Their confession wasn't positive enough. Their seed wasn't big enough. Tears streamed openly down his face now. What if I was wrong? A gasp moved through the crowd like wind through wheat. What if I've been preaching a gospel that Jesus never taught? He told the rich young ruler to sell everything. He said, "Blessed are the poor." He said it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter heaven. And I've been standing here telling you the opposite. His voice broke. I live in a mansion worth more than most of you will earn in your entire lives. I fly on private jets. I've accumulated wealth while preaching that wealth is a sign of God's favor. But what if my wealth isn't proof that I'm blessed? What if it's proof that I missed the whole point? He turned to look at Jasmine. Your grandmother didn't lack faith. She had more faith than I've ever had. She gave everything she had because she trusted God. The failure wasn't hers. He faced the congregation again. The failure was mine. I taught her to expect something God never promised. And I'm so sorry. The dam broke. Throughout the arena, people began to weep. Not tears of sadness, but tears of release. Decades of guilt dissolving. Years of feeling inadequate suddenly lifted. The permission to stop performing finally granted. One woman stood up. Then another. Then hundreds. Not leaving. Not protesting. Just standing in witness to something they never expected to see. Joel Osteen, broken and real, finally telling the truth. But the night wasn't over. What Jasmine did next would complete a transformation no one saw coming. Jasmine rose from her chair and walked toward Joel, the man who had built an empire, the man whose theology she had come to challenge, the man who had just shattered his own image in front of millions. She took his hand. Joel, I didn't come here to destroy you. I came here with anger. I came here with 15 years of grief and blame. I wanted you to feel what my grandmother felt. Her voice softened. But watching you just now, that took more courage than any sermon you've ever preached. And I think my grandmother would want me to say something to you. Joel looked at her, his face raw with emotion. She would want me to say, you're forgiven. Not by me. By the same God you've been preaching about. The one who doesn't keep score. The one who doesn't require perfect theology. The one who loves broken people exactly as they are. Joel's composure crumbled again. How do I move forward from this? How do I face this congregation after admitting everything I taught might be wrong? Jasmine's answer was simple. You tell the truth. And you trust that the people who really love you will love you more for being honest than they ever loved you for being perfect. She paused. My grandmother used to say something. The truth will set you free, but first it'll break your heart. I think your heart just broke tonight, Joel. Welcome to freedom. Joel nodded slowly, then asked the question that would define the rest of the evening. Will you pray for me? I've prayed for thousands of people from this stage. But right now, I need someone to pray for me. Not Pastor Joel. Just Joel. A man who doesn't have it all figured out. The congresswoman who came to confront was now being asked to intercede. What she prayed would be replayed millions of times. But it's what happened after the prayer that truly changed everything. Stay until the end. This is the moment that matters most. Like this video if you believe in the power of truth. Jasmine bowed her head and prayed words that weren't rehearsed, weren't polished, weren't political. God, I came here angry. I came here wanting justice for my grandmother. But I think what you wanted was something different. You wanted healing. Not just for me. For Joel. For everyone watching who has ever felt like they weren't enough. She squeezed Joel's hand. Help us all remember that your love isn't a transaction. We don't earn it. We can't buy it. We just receive it. Remind Joel, remind all of us, that we are loved simply because we exist. Nothing more required. When she finished, Joel embraced her. Not a staged moment. Not a photo opportunity. A genuine connection between two people who had just experienced something neither expected. Joel turned to the camera one final time. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. But I know this. I'm done pretending. I'd rather be honest and uncertain than confident and wrong. 6 months later, Joel Osteen would launch a new initiative. A fund to help families in financial crisis, with no strings attached. No seed faith required. No promises of multiplication. Just help. Jasmine Crockett would receive thousands of letters from people who watched that night and finally felt permission to question what they'd been taught. And somewhere, a grandmother named Dorothy smiled. The night the smile broke became the night the truth broke through. You don't have to perform for God's love. You just have to receive it. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories of courage, truth, and transformation.